Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining this Saddleback webinar this week. My name is Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. Happy summer. Hopefully you all remember to join us an hour earlier than normal today. As you are signing in, please locate your control bar, which is at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you will find your chat, Q&A, and live transcript options. The chat area is how you will communicate with us today. Just please remember that when you are typing a message in the chat, to select all panelists and attendees to ensure that everyone who is joining us today can see your message. For questions, if you have questions either for Saddleback or for our presenter today, you're going to want to go ahead and put those in the Q&A area, and we will get to those just as soon as we can. And if you'd like to take advantage of subtitles, you need to select live transcript and then choose the show subtitle option, and that will give you the subtitles for you. We'll get started right at 11 o'clock Pacific time. While we're waiting, this is how you can find us on Twitter. Saddleback and Alex Caggiatani are on Twitter, so go there, follow us, say hello, let everybody know you are joining us for this great learning opportunity today. And while we're waiting to get started, let's say hi to Alex and see how he's doing. How are you, friend?
Hey, great. What an honor to be here. I see we've got people streaming in from all over. So welcome, welcome. It's an honor. I know you had a lot to do today on this summer day, so we're going to make it totally worth your time.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. And I was just saying earlier, oh my gosh, with this webinar is a little bit earlier today. We're just trying out something a little bit different. So for those of you who are hopping on, thank you. I hope maybe some of them are on a beach somewhere with a nice drink and joining us to have this conversation. That would be nice. I can't do that because I think that would probably not look so professional if I was on a beach hosting a webinar. But you know, maybe someday I can talk to Saddleback about that.
Might not throw anybody off.
All right, let's check the chat. Tina's here. If you could go to the chat, let us know where you're joining us from. Hi, Tina. Hi, Emily. How are you? I see Emily's joining us from Maryland. And Melba's from Round Rock ISD. Hi. That's where I am in Round Rock. We've got a couple people from Maryland, so that's awesome. Okay. Virginia, Illinois.
All right. See, we've got Cameron with us and Caruso. Elizabeth's here. Eric, Francis is with us as well. Jason, Lakeisha, welcome, welcome. Looks like Martha and Mary. So glad you're here. Hi, Paula. Hi, Philip. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, Gail from Spring ISD. Thank you for joining us. So as you know, I am in Austin, Texas. And where are you joining us from today, Alex?
I'm from San Diego, California.
He's in San Diego. Okay, so we've got a few people joining us from California today, it looks like, in the chat. Hi, Laura. Hi, Jordan. Cameron in Columbus. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and thank you for being here. I know as we continue on today, more people will be jumping in. So our topic today is empowering our English learners to achieve in math. We have a phenomenal speaker to talk about this topic today. This is Alex Caggiatani, everybody. If you don't know him, you're in for a real treat, but let me just formally introduce you. So he is the 2009 California Teacher of the Year and a top 4 finalist for National Teacher of the Year. He is a highly sought after keynote speaker and author who supports and motivates teachers nationwide, and he's known around the world as the Rubin mathematician and the creator of the Math Success Camps for Migrant students, as well as the wildly popular times table training program, multiplicationnation.com. He has a TED Talk, so if you haven't seen that, check that out. He's been honored at the White House, and he was featured on the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric, and she said, I love that guy when she met him. So we all do. Alex, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited about this session. I'm gonna let you take it from here.
Well, thank you so much, Liz, and the whole team at Saddleback for bringing us all together. It is such an honor. Like I said earlier, we know you had lots and lots of options on how to spend your summer day, and you chose to spend an hour of today with us. And so we're going to make it totally worth your time. But thank you for that wonderful introduction. I think the most important thing to know is I'm an educator, just like everybody who's here today. Most of my career, I've been right here at Mission Middle School. Mission is located in the city of Escondido, California, in Northeast San Diego. here's a picture of some of our fabulous and amazing students. 85% of our students are Latinx, 10% are white, 5% are Black, 80% are English language learners, most of whom come right from Mexico and Central America. And on paper, we are listed and referred to as one of California's fastest growing high poverty neighborhoods, but we've begun to rebrand that as one of California's most culturally rich neighborhoods, because we absolutely are. As you heard earlier, I am known around the world now as the rapping mathematician, but I promise it is not something I ever sought out to be. Several years ago, I was a new teacher, just absolutely struggling to survive in my classroom. And I couldn't get my students to pay attention. I couldn't get them to sit still in their seats. And I certainly couldn't get them to seem to remember the math I had just taught them 5 minutes ago. But what I realized is a rap song would come out on Monday. And by Tuesday, they seemed to have every single word memorized. And so I thought, okay, I got to play on this strength, right? And so one day we were studying adding and subtracting decimals. I wrote a rap song called The Itty Bitty Dot about the decimal point. And I went home, I found a free hip hop rap beat, and I practiced it all night, I will admit, in front of my mirror. And I thought to myself, I am so going to be the man when I go into school tomorrow. Now, if you know anything about middle school or teaching in general, you pretty much already know how this story ends. Let's just say I was not the man, but nevertheless, I got everything ready. The students came in. I busted out the itty bitty dot. As you can imagine, it was a complete disaster. My students began laughing at me hysterically. And I'll never forget, I had one student, Josue Hernandez. He was laughing so hard, he began clutching his stomach and shaking. He fell out of his chair, hit his head on the carpet. I had to send him to the nurse for an ice pack. And so I thought, okay, I see exactly where my career is going, right? Yesterday, my students wouldn't pay attention to me. Today, they're laughing at me. Tomorrow, I'm pretty sure I'll be looking for a new job. And so I kind of blew it off and went about my day. And then a really interesting thing happened later. I was walking to the teacher's lounge for lunch. I walked by the student lunch tables and they were all singing the itty bitty dot. And the next day, something which had never happened to me actually happened. They came excited to be in my class. I think for the first time ever, they ran into my class with the same amount of energy that they normally ran out of my class with. And they were saying things like, oh, Mr. Conchitani, are you going to rap again? Yesterday was the best day ever in math class. And Josue, whose head was all healed now from his big fall, he actually asked me if I was going to quit teaching and be on MTV full time. And so you're about to see why MTV has not exactly called yet. But I will tell you, at the end of the week, my students' test scores on adding and subtracting decimals absolutely shot through the roof. And so I like to say I've been math rapping ever since. So this is totally embarrassing, but I'm just going to put myself out there, show you a video that my students made of the first song I ever attempted, the itty bitty dot. I promise you my dance moves have gotten much better since filming this video. Okay, I still cannot dance, but hard to believe. I think this video has gotten over 250,000 views on YouTube, and along with the other rap and math videos, are now being used in homes and classrooms all over the world to engage kids in math and make math cool. So please be gentle. Remember, I'm a teacher who raps, not a rapper who teaches. But here it is, the itty bitty dot. You might want to turn your speaker up or down for this one. Here we go.
Now what in the world is that itty bitty dot? Yo, I just can't remember and it's making me distraught. I saw it in the price of the item I just bought. It's the decimal point. Yeah, now you're getting hot. When you add and subtract them, there must be a rule. So listen to my rhyme and use it as a tool. Just line up the dot and give it all you got. I said line up the dot and give it all you got. And when you take the difference, in other words subtraction, just use the same rule and bring on the action. Just line up the dot and give it all you got. Come on, line up the dot and give it all you got. So turn off the TV, forget the radio station, cause the itty bitty dot is a math sensation. Move it to the right and the number becomes greater, and the itty bitty dot needs no translator. Move it to the left and the number gets smaller. Yes, the itty bitty dot is an academic scholar. So don't forget the rule, which needs no revision, cause the itty bitty dot is on a great big mission. Line up the dot, give it all you got. Line up the dot, give it all you got. And thus this concludes the decimal song. With the rapping mathematician, you can't go wrong. Just line up the dot and give it all you got. I said line up the dot and give it all you got. Just line up the dot and give it all you got. Come on, line up the dot and give it all you got. Just line up the dot and give it all you got. I said line up the dot and give it all you got. Just line up the dot and give it all you got. Come on, line up the dot and give it all you got.
Spin. There it pretty much was. All right, thank you, thank you. I hope that'll be stuck in your head for the the rest of the day, and you'll never forget how to balance your checkbook, right? All right, I have 3 personal goals for all of us today. The first goal, of course, is that you get some inspiration out of our time together, that you go to lunch or breakfast or dinner tonight and you think, geez, spent an hour with Saddleback and it was totally worth it. The work that we do as educators is the most important work that happens across the planet every single day. And so whether this is your first year or your 31st year in education, I hope you'll get some inspiration. I know it's been a crazy year. And so I hope you'll be inspired. The second goal, of course, is implementation, that you get some real things that you can use in the classroom with your students in order to help empower not just your EL students, but all of your students to achieve in math, give you some real things. And of course, the third goal is that nobody sits there thinking, geez, I wish Alex would hurry up. I really have to pee. So don't worry, okay? We're gonna keep this moving. We're gonna keep this grooving. We're gonna end on time. We're gonna make sure this is one of those professional developments, not one of those professional developments. And if you've been around long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So along with inspiration and implementation, we're going for no constipation this morning, okay? That is my deep commitment to you. Hey, if at any point you want to take a screenshot of anything I'm showing or take a picture or whatever the case may be, go for it, go for it, go for it. What's mine is yours. Hey, everything I'm going to share with you, I pretty much learned from teachers just like you. So take it, make it your own. We're also going to make the recording available so you can look it over and share it as many times as you need to. Please remember also, this is a buffet, not a fixed menu, okay? I'm not here to say, oh, everything you've been teaching is wrong and you should be using my 12-step system or anything like that, right? Just like at a buffet, you try to eat everything, you're going to get a stomach ache. Take what you know works. Try some new things. Adjust some new things. Try a new twist on some old things. You do what you need to do to make this morning work for you. And so, diving in here, I always liken teaching our EL students, especially in math, it's kind of like if you ever have had to teach somebody to drive, right? Now, if you've ever had to teach someone to drive, you do the obvious things, right? You find a big open parking lot, or you find a road that does not have a lot of cars on it, right? And you sort of start really, really slowly. Well, let's say that you're going to teach somebody to drive. So you put them in the driver's seat, you get in the passenger seat, but then all of a sudden you realize you are at the on-ramp of a major US highway. That's kind of like what it's like sometimes teaching our English learners, right? You've got to get them up to speed. You've got to get them figuring out how to navigate this huge, intimidating thing called the US education system. And I don't want to overblow the analogy, but we don't really know what's around the next turn. So we've got to get them ready and thinking for whatever might come our way. And we've got to sometimes do it with what feels like a very short amount of time or on-ramp. And so what I want to do today is I want to share with you 6 strategies that I have learned over the years to really empower our English learners, specifically in mathematics. Some of the times some of the strategies are pretty general. Some of them are really focused on the numbers themselves, and I'm really excited to share them with you. And the first strategy is that I found and that I've learned is to understand how deeply EL parents care about the education of their children. I have heard on many occasions teachers say things like, oh yeah, the parents at the school, they're not really that involved in their students' education. They don't really care that much. When in actuality, what many of us have found is that they care so very deeply. They're just really, really busy with sometimes trying to put food on the table, or sometimes quite intimidated to come into the classrooms, or they come from a culture where parents are expected not to come onto campus. And so it may also have been a while since some of our EL students were in a school setting, especially some of our newcomer students, right? Some come to us from refugee camps. Can you imagine being in a refugee camp for 2 or 3 months or weeks, and then suddenly they land in your classroom, right? I was working with a high school in Texas, and the high school is right on the border. And so they actually have students who cross the border every morning to get to school and every afternoon to get home. And so when I was meeting with them, I said, like, how do you know, the border crossing can be very long, a lot of wait time. How do you know? And they said, well, we just always plan 2 hours. So we cross the border at 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we have to wait in a big long line and we're running to make it to our first period class. Sometimes we just walk right through and we just go and sit in the library because the librarian opens the library up for them to sit and get some work done. So a lot going on, right? And then of course, COVID-19, right? All of us have been somehow affected by COVID-19, whether our health or, our finances but all of us, emotionally have been affected by this. And so there's a lot of sometimes what we call interrupted learning going on. And so as you also heard earlier, I do run what are called migrant math success camps. And so what we do across California, and I've done them in Texas as well, is we get migrant students together and we have, anywhere from 1 day to a week's worth of math camps during the summer. And so we brought in a guest speaker named Patricia Solano. This is Patricia on the left. She was a migrant student, an English learner growing up, and she told the students this story about where she would do her homework every single night. And I was so blown away by the story. I got out my iPhone and I said, you have to tell this story and let me record it so that I can show it to other educators. So sit back, relax, listen to Patricia talk about what she went through just to get her homework done as she was growing up as an EL student. Here's Patricia. Take it away, Ms. Solano.
Well, one of the things, I just told them that when I was in high school, I needed to do my math homework and my English homework as well. But given that we didn't have money to rent or own an apartment, we had to share the house with a lot of people. My room I had to share with 9 other people. The living room was taken by another 5 males, so I couldn't study there either. And the garage was also taken by other 3 people. So there was no place for me to study and do my homework. So the only place available for me to focus and have some lights on, it was the restroom. So I will wait till everybody went to bed, and then I will sneak out and I will stay there and I will sit on the toilet and I will do my homework right there. And whenever I heard footsteps that they needed to use the restroom, I will open the door right away and I will tell them, oh, it's not taken, you can go in. And then they will use the restroom to do their business, and then they will walk out, and then I will walk back again so that I could do my homework there. I didn't have my own room, but I was lucky enough to have a place where to study. I was lucky enough to have a place where to sleep, where to shower, and I always had food in my table. And I always had my mom and my brother that loved me and cared for me, and that's all it mattered. And I knew that I just have to put some time into study and I will be able to make it.
So there it is, right? If you caught that, like she said she had her mom and her brother who loved her very much, who always put food on the table, and so that's what helped her know that she could get through. Our EL parents care so deeply about their students' future. Patricia went on to get a master's degree in mathematics and lives a very good, successful life now. And it all because she had this parent who cared so very deeply. The second strategy that I want to share with you is that, this is one of the simplest yet most effective things teachers can do with our EL students, which is get their name right? Believe me, my last name is Kajitani. You wouldn't believe the number of teachers who have made the effort to say my last name correctly and the number of teachers who just said, I'll never get that, and they've made up what they think is some cute, but I think is a degrading nickname for me, right? There is nothing more empowering for a student than a teacher who takes the time to learn to say their name correctly. There is nothing more degrading for a student than a teacher who just thinks, I'll never be able to pronounce that. Take a moment, ask them how to say their name, write it out phonetically, do whatever you need to do. Even if you make mistakes from time to time, as long as you're making the effort, the kids seem to be fine with that. But again, the number one way to build a connection with an EL student, make sure you're pronouncing their name correctly. Now, as a bonus, if you can learn to just one word, just say hello in their native language, that will build your relationship exponentially, right? And then, of course, if you ever meet with a parent or you're calling home and you can just call and just start by saying hola or bonjour or ciao, right? If you can just say hello in their native language, huge relationship building. And what we also know is it's really hard to learn math from a teacher who you don't have a good relationship with. So get the name right, learn to say hello. All right, let's dive into the mathematics and the numbers a little bit more. The third strategy that I want to share with you today is whenever and however possible, we want to make it visual, right? Students are learning lots and lots of different ways, but we want to make it visual. Sometimes that just means surrounding them with words and as many words as possible, right? Instead of just having a stapler on our desk, take a little label, write the word stapler on it, put it on the stapler. Otherwise, a student might look at something like this and think that the name of this object is a swing line, which is actually, if you look closely, just the name brand of this stapler, right? Instead of just writing 3:2 or 3/2, just taking a moment to write ratio underneath or fraction so that the students can associate the word with the mathematical number. This is a great story. I told the students once that I was really excited because tomorrow we were going to learn how to use a protractor, and I was actually going to give all of the students a protractor to take home. Well, one of my students, Maricela, she came up to me after class. She said, Mr. Kachitani, I know you're going to give everybody a protractor, but there's no way that I could take a protractor home. I don't have enough room for it. And I pulled out a protractor. I said, you don't have enough room for this? She got a huge look of relief on her face. You know what she had been picturing? She had been picturing this. She thought I was going to give them all a tractor. I said protractor. She didn't know what it was. And so if I had just taken that time to hold up a protractor, to label it as a protractor, would have saved her quite a bit of worry. We also want to take the time to really build that vocabulary, especially as we are anticipating images in word problems, right? Here's kind of a typical run-of-the-mill word problem that we might encounter. Check this out. On Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, Jenna rides her bike 1.5 miles to get to school each morning. On Thursdays and Fridays, she rides the bus. How far does she ride on her bike in a typical week getting to and from school? Okay, look at this, and in the chat box, here's what I want you to do. Pick a word or a term that you know might throw off or might confuse one or two or some of your EL students. And Liz, maybe if you can read some of them off as they come through. So just in the chat box, what are some terms, what are some words that might be a little tough for our EL students? Go ahead.
I'm seeing typical week, miles, each. Typical is coming up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, right? And that's exactly where I'm going with this, right? Typical week, that's going to be a pretty weird one. What does that even mean, what a typical week is? So maybe you take some time, and you don't have to have a fancy PowerPoint presentation like this or anything. You could print out pictures or draw it or whatever and print out what a typical week looks like, right? Unless you can get somebody named Jenna to ride her bike through class, maybe you just put up a picture of Jenna riding their bike through class. Maybe a bus, right? Might throw some of our EL students off as well. Not throw them off, but they might not know exactly what that is. Maybe you want to go a little bit even more advanced. And in that typical week, you've got Jenna riding her bike to school on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. On Thursday and Friday, she's taking the bus. Depending on how deeply you want to scaffold this, maybe you've even got the 1.5. But of course, it's 1.5 miles to school each morning, but then it doesn't say anything about getting home in the afternoon. So that's something that we've just got to kind of anticipate. And so The other thing that is really helpful for a lot of our students with regards to making it visual is to sometimes show the partial solution or the entire solution before you actually do the math. You can see that I'm color coding it as well, right? Maybe we can put something like to school, there's 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. But then, of course, she's got to get home as well. Maybe we've got a total. Now, look at the way that I've used colors, right? I've got the numbers that we're working with in yellow, but then you can see in light blue, I have the structure of the problem. See how I've lined up the dots so we can give it all you got, right? I've got the addition sign, the addition line. So you can just look at just the light blue and you can see how we're structuring this problem. And then over on the right, I've got the final answer in white. So sometimes we want to show part of the solution. Sometimes we can show the whole thing. I would not recommend going over 3 colors. 2 to 3 colors is good. After that, it just kind of gets, just kind of gets to look like an art piece of artwork. But, I would just stick with 2, maybe 3 colors at the most when you're using different colors. Okay, so check this out. We're working on the chocolate factory problem with my EL students, right? So I put it up. I say, okay, everybody, Stephanie, Corey, and Veronica each arrived at the chocolate factory at different times. Half the hands in the class shoot up. Oh, we know how to solve this, Mr. Kachitani. I said, but I haven't even finished reading it to you yet. They said, that's okay. We know exactly what to do. I said, what? They said, you're going to divide. I said, divide? They said, absolutely. I said, why do you think you're going to divide? They said, because we know the trick. I said, the trick? What's the trick? They said, well, it's that word right there, each. I think somebody mentioned that just a few minutes ago, too. They said, we learned last year that anytime you hear the word each, it automatically means it's a division problem. Like if you have 20 cookies and 5 friends, how many cookies does each friend get? Automatic division problem. And that's when I realized, especially with our English learners, that the problem with word problems is words, right? Yes, the numbers are really, really tough, but it's all of the words that surround the numbers that give it that context that really pose that additional challenge. And so when we think about what it is that effective readers do and what effective math students do, right? If you picture some of your students, right, who are really good readers or who are really good effective math students, what is it that they're doing while they're reading? What is it that they're doing while they're in the act of doing math, right? Effective readers are constantly creating mental imagery based on descriptions. You read that an effective reader reads that a big red ball rolled down the steep hill. They're picturing a big red ball rolling down the steep hill. Likewise, effective math students are creating mental imagery based on numbers. If I told you that I'm sitting in a room that is 25 feet long right now, you're not picturing a big conference room or a football field or anything like that. Effective readers are consistently using context clues to understand unfamiliar text, right? They're looking at all of the words around the words. Similarly, effective math students are using symbols and operations to guide them in how to proceed. You see an addition sign, you generally know what's going to happen next, right? You see parentheses and an exponent, you pretty much know where this one is going. Finally, effective readers are able to maintain stamina and focus, right? They're not just going to read a paragraph or a page and then say, oh, I'm tired. Effective math students are going to really persevere to find a solution, right? They're going to look for ways into that math word problem and ways to get through it and then be able to ask themselves whether their answer is reasonable. The ability to read and the ability to do math are inextricably linked. And so that is of utmost importance to keep in mind. As our EL students become more effective readers, they're going to become more effective math students. The truth is, reading and math is different as well, right? We've got the same words, but sometimes there is a specialized meaning in mathematics. They have totally unique meanings. Allow me to demonstrate this for you by seeing if you can solve today's minute mystery. Are you ready? See if you can solve today's mystery. Here it is. A man is inside a cave when a huge boulder falls in front of the entrance, completely sealing him off from the outside world. He is now completely surrounded by thick rock, and there is absolutely no entrance or exit. And all he has inside the cave is a small stick, and it's not a stick of dynamite. How does he get out? Ooh. All right, I could keep you in suspense, but this is the advanced webinar, so we're just going to roll through. Are you ready? He breaks the stick into two halves. He puts the two halves together to make a hole. He climbs out the hole. Thank you very much. I'll be here all night. Thank you, thank you. Now, as groan-worthy as that is, to our English learners, that's a pretty confusing one, right? That's going to take a bit of explanation. There are the same words that our students, especially our ELs, have learned and used in outside of the math context, but then in the math classroom, they take on a whole new meaning. There's whole, W-H-O-L-E, 100% of something versus a hole in their ground, right? Students say things like, can I have some cookies? Or can someone help me? Then they get to math class and they learn, oh, the sum is the answer to an addition problem. They go next door to language arts class and they talk about similarities and differences, but in math class, the difference is what results when you subtract one number from another. All their lives, kids grow up thinking that somebody who is mean is not nice. Then they get to math class and they realize somebody who is mean is just average. Okay, that was the last bad joke, I promise. In most aspects of life, something that is negative is considered bad, right? But then in math class, their mind is blown when they realize, oh, 0 is just the median number. It's not the smallest number. There's an entire world of negative numbers that lives below the number line. In math, what do we teach? Order of operations, right? PEMDAS. For anything in parentheses is the priority. In language arts, anything in parentheses is simply an afterthought. We've got the same words, but totally unique meanings. Of course, there was the student who was told to name the quadrilateral. So he did, named the first one Bob, second one Sam, Tedison, right? It goes on and on and on. The fourth strategy that I want to share with you that is so critical is just like we want to surround our students with words, we want to surround them with success. When you learn that you have a student coming from, let's say, Iran, who's going to be in your class, quick Google search, famous mathematicians from Iran, right? You will come up with Mariam Mirzakhani, who is now a famous mathematician at Stanford. So imagine a student comes into your class, they're a bit culture shocked, they sit down, oh, hi, welcome to the class, where are you from? Oh, you're from Iran? Oh, look at this, have you ever heard of Mariam Mirzakhani? Mirzakhani, she's an Iranian mathematician, right? And it just gives you that ability to connect not only personally with the student, with the EL student, but also with your students on a cultural level, which we're going to talk about in just a few moments. One of my favorite guests that I bring in every year is Dr. Rubin Ramos. Dr. Ramos was a migrant student. His family came, I think from El Salvador. They came when he was a young kid, and he went on to get his doctorate, and he's now a NASA engineer. And so I wanted to show you this picture. He does a demonstration with heat and materials and things like that. I'm going to zoom in. Look at the young woman's face. I'm going to zoom in on her face and this picture that I caught in this moment. Look at that face, right? It does not matter what language you speak. It does not matter, what math we're looking at. When you see the wonder and the amazement on her face, what you see are infinite possibilities. What you see is not, a student who has lots and lots of challenges in their life. You see a student who is filled with wonder and potential. And that happens. That's not something that I could ever do. We had to bring in Dr. Ramos for that. And so what I encourage you to do is think about who could you bring in to speak with your EL students to make sure that they are surrounded with success. With Zoom, right, it's really even easy. You don't have to bring them in personally. But what I encourage you to do is bring in people, guest speakers from your students' neighborhood. Bring in students who look like and who have life experiences similar to your own students. Doesn't have to be a NASA engineer. It could be a local locksmith or a plumber or somebody who works in an office. Have them come in and talk about how they use math in their jobs every day. We want to surround them with success. Number 5, that strategy that I've learned is that sometimes, not always, but sometimes competence has to come before confidence, right? Look, as teachers, we spend a lot of time making it cool, right? Like, I'm the rapping mathematician, right? Guilty as charged, but we spend a lot of time just trying to make it so awesome and make it so cool and tell kids how great they are, when really, sometimes what we've got to do is just stop. And if we realize that a student doesn't know something, stop and get them the knowledge that they need. It doesn't matter if they were supposed to have learned it last year. Doesn't matter if they don't remember it, right? Sometimes we've just got to stop, help them with the math, and then we're going to watch their confidence soar. If you think about the chocolate factory problem that I referenced earlier, right? My students had a lot of confidence. When it came to competence, a little bit low, right? It would have only taken 1 or 2 more problems for them to realize, oh, we don't actually know, we don't actually know exactly how to solve this. If we want students to mix chemicals confidently in the lab, we've got to make sure that they take the time to memorize and understand those competency skills of the periodic table of the elements. And so I had to share, this is a picture of my daughter, Senna. She wanted me to let you know that she said it was okay for her to use this picture in this presentation. But when Senna was in 3rd grade, she was bombing in math, right? I know. Alex, how can your kid not be good at math? You're the rapping mathematician. I know it's a whole ego thing, but here's the truth. Me as a math teacher, my kid was not doing well in math class. And so the teacher invited me in to sit in the back of the classroom. And, I have a master's degree in education. I generally know what's happening in a classroom. And so I'm watching, and this is a kid who's super confident in so many aspects of life. But in math, you could literally see her like shriveled up under the desk, like praying the teacher wouldn't call on her. And, they were working on like area of a rectangle or something. And she couldn't get past what's 3 times 5. And so I realized, oh, she just doesn't know her math facts, right? She doesn't know her times table. So I was like, I could fix that. So I got home later that afternoon. She got home later that afternoon. I said, oh, honey, thank you so much for letting me be in your class today. I had so much fun. I think I know the issue of why you're struggling in math. You just don't know your times table. So it's okay. Dad's a math teacher. We're going to get this worked out. No problem. Turns out, which is what a lot of parents found during the COVID shutdown, you can teach 5 classes a day, 30 kids per class, way easier than teaching your own 1 child. Am I right? Come on, am I right? So let's just say there were a lot of tears. A lot of tears. My daughter cried a little bit also from time to time, but eventually we got them knocked out. Month and a half later, I was back in her classroom. They were starting on skip counting and long division. There she was, confidently raising her hand because she now had the competence, right? Lisa Delpit, one of our most prolific education authors, one of my favorite authors of all time, wrote a book called Multiplication is for White People. She got the idea for the title of this book when she was volunteering in a 3rd grade classroom. She says to a young African-American child, hey, let's work on your times tables. He looks at her and says, I don't do multiplication. Multiplication is for white people, right? By 3rd grade, he had already received the messages that the higher level thinking skills were not reserved for him. As educators, we know like that's not the higher level stuff. That's the stuff you need to do the stuff you need to do the higher level stuff. Obviously, I'm not saying don't teach critical thinking. I love what Delpit goes on to say. She says, one cannot divorce the teaching of basic skills from the demands of critical thinking. I'm not saying let's not teach critical thinking. I'm saying the critical thinking that is the capabilities that live within all of our students, especially our English learners, becomes much more accessible when they've got those basic skills nailed down. And so that's why you heard earlier, I am now on a mission to make sure every kid masters their times table. So I started the popular program, multiplicationnation.com. It's an online program, so every kid gets their own account and logs in. And we've got all sorts of super fun videos and instruction and assessments that take them through mastering their times tables. And so this is me and little Jose. Jose, I call him the smallest member ever of the Multiplication Nation. EL student. He had just moved here a couple of years earlier from Mexico. And he said to me, hey, Mr. Kajitani, you're the Multiplication Nation guy, right? I said, yeah, what's up, Jose? He said, hey, can you hook me up with an account? I want to master my times tables. I said, what grade are you in? He said, 2nd. I said, dude, that's great, but we usually start in 3rd grade. He said, no, please, Mr. Kajitani, I want to master my times tables. I know I could do it. So I got him all set up with an account. He logged in, a couple times a week. By Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving, he had completely mastered his times tables, and his teacher said he was totally rocking it in math class. Now, think about the confidence and the competence that little Jose has compared to the young student in Lisa Delpit's class, right? Some students are able to advocate for themselves. Some students need us to advocate for them. But regardless of what it is, we have got to make sure that they've got the competence and not just a sometimes false sense of confidence. I wanted to read this email to you that I got from a student of mine named Leslie. I got it at the end of the school year a couple of years ago. So listen to this. I just want to read it to you. Hi, Mr. Caggiatani. You probably won't remember me, but I was in your math class, I believe in 7th or 8th grade at Mission Middle School. My name is Leslie Diaz, and I was always bad at math, but when I had you as a teacher, I realized it wasn't that I was bad at math, I just lacked confidence. Long story short, I remember you made me stay after school several times to tutor me, and to help improve my grade in class, you mentioned you'd give me a few extra points if I presented to the class some information about a famous Latina mathematician. I did, and I remember it being one of the first times I had ever presented in front of a class. I was so nervous. However, it did make me realize it wasn't so bad and increased my confidence. I'm now a graduate of UC Berkeley undergrad and will be starting law school at UC Berkeley School of Law this fall. I currently live and work in San Francisco, California in intellectual property patent litigation as a paralegal. I can speak from experience that you making me do all that work made a difference in my life. Now, I'll be honest, do I totally remember Leslie? Nah, you know, look, as teachers, we don't remember all of our students, right? But what is she saying there? Me making her do all that work was in large part the reason for the success. It wasn't me necessarily building her up and telling her how amazing she was. I'm sure I did that as well. But sometimes competence comes before confidence. Speaking of word problems, I want to share with you this amazing strategy that I use all the time, very effective with our EL students. This is so easy, you're not going to believe, you're going to have a hard time believing you never did it. It's called build it, right? So here's what you do. Whenever you know that you're going to teach a word problem, instead of just giving them the word problem, what you do is you take the word problem, cut it up into separate sentences or sentence fragments, and then you give them the sentence fragments. And all the students have to do is put them together in the correct order. That's it. They don't have to solve it yet. They don't have to come up with a solution or a strategy. They just put them together in an order that makes sense. So let me try it out on you. I'm going to give you 5 sentence fragments in about 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Look at these 5 and see if you can put them in an order so that if you read it straight through, it makes sense. Go ahead. I'll give you half a minute or so. All right, take about 10 more seconds. Now, of course, if this were my normal classroom, we'd take some time. We'd have the students put them in order, read them out loud, things like that. But again, this is the advanced webinar, so hopefully you got something like this. Kyle spends a total of 47 minutes working in his garden. He spends 14 minutes planting vegetables and 19 minutes pulling weeds. He spends the rest of the time picking berries. What is the amount of time that Kyle spends picking berries? Right now, what would you say? In order to put that in the correct order, you had to read through each sentence fragment 3, 4, maybe 5 times. Could you imagine if you put a word problem up and your student said, oh, hold on a second, Miss Jones, before I even attempt to do anything with this word problem, would it be okay if I read through it 3, 4, maybe 5 times? That would be amazing. Try build it. Take this. It's super easy to implement. Again, you don't have to have a fancy PowerPoint. You can just write them on the board or literally cut them out with scissors. All the students have to do is put them in order. What they're doing is they're starting to make sense of the problem and persevere in finding an answer. The final strategy that I want to share with you today is whenever and however possible, connect the mathematics with their culture, right? Stop trying to take the math and force it into their lives, and instead take our students' lives and see where it fits into their culture. I'll never forget, I was teaching, I was just doing some basic addition once, or subtraction, and a student an EL student came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, Mr. Kajitani, you know what you were showing us earlier?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "That's not how they teach it in Mexico." I said, "How do they teach it in Mexico?" So check this out. Standard subtraction problem, right? For us, we would go, okay, 543 minus 231. We'll start over there on the right. 3 minus 1 is 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. 5 minus 2 is 3, right? But this student said in Mexico, they teach it from the bottom up. So check this out. They start with 1 and they go, okay, if I'm at 1 and I want to get to 3, how many do I add? I add 2. If I'm at 3 and I need to get to 4, I'm going to add 1. If I'm at 2 and I need to get to 5, I'm going to add 3, right? They're actually subtracting up. Think about when you say something to our EL students like, okay, let's take these numbers and add them up. They might picture us having to add them going up. Of course, it's not always that easy. Sometimes we've got to regroup, right? So look at something like this. How do we get from 8 to 6? Now we're looking at it from the bottom up like they teach it in Mexico. How do we get from 8 to 6? We cannot get from 8 to 6, but we can get from 8 to 16. So we're going to regroup there and put a 10 there by the 7. Now that 7 and 1 are going to make 8. Actually, the 70 and the 10 will make 80, but 7 and 1 will make 8. How many to get from 8 to 3? Can't do it. So, but we can get from 8 to 13 if we regroup. So we'll put that there. Now we've got a 4 and a 1 make 5. How many to get from 5 to 8? Well, that's 3. How many to get from 1 to 2? That's 1, for a total of 1,300, or a difference of 1,358. Now, teach it your way. Teach it whatever way you feel is most effective. But taking a moment to say, hey, here's how I learned they often teach it in Mexico. Maybe they teach it a totally different way in China. Maybe they teach it a totally different way in Vietnam. How cool would it be for students to know all the ways? What we're really doing is we're building their number sense every step of the way. Anytime you see something from the student's neighborhood that you can use it, use it, use it. I will admit from time to time, okay, quite often, I stop after school at the taco shop across the street from my school and I get a big old burrito to eat on the way home. So I go through the drive-thru and I see this sign. Well, let me zoom in on this sign right here. And it says, customer pricing notice. A 0.70 cent customer service charge is applied to all store sales. Cash discount. As an incentive for customers, we now provide a discount to pay with cash or in-store gift card by giving a 70-cent immediate discount. Pay by cash and save. Well, first of all, this is not a discount. What they're doing is they're jacking the price up, as my students would say. They're jacking it up 70 cents, adding 70 cents to your order. And then if you don't pay with a credit card, because they don't want to pay the credit card fees, they'll give you the 70 cents off, which just makes it the normal price. And look at that. That's mathematically incorrect. It's not 70 cents they're saying. They're saying it's 0.7 of a cent, right? Less than 1 cent. So whoever made this sign didn't even make it mathematically accurate. Now, I took a picture of this. I put it up. We had an amazing conversation with my students about discounts, about place value, about what it means, about percentages, right? My students tell me every time they go to the taco shop, because they go there a lot also, they see the sign, they show the sign to their mom or their dad or their cousins or whoever they're with, and the math that we talked about continues to be a huge part of their everyday life. Stop trying to take the math and forcing it into our EL students. Instead, take our students and their lives and see where it fits into the mathematics. As Kathleen Flynn and Jane Hill say in their wonderful book, Classroom Instruction That Works with English Language Learners, language structure and form should be learned in authentic contexts rather than through contrived drills in language workbooks. It took me years to figure out that my EL students had just gotten really good at saying the same 10 things because I just kept asking them the same 10 questions over and over again. It's not until we step back and allow them to talk about the math that we can really see their level of knowledge. One of the last things I want to share with you, before I start to wrap up, this is a great game. You've got to play this game with your students. It's so fun. It's called The Math Professor. Very simple. I don't have any fancy outfits or anything. I just say to my students, okay, I believe that there is nothing that does not have something to do with math. And if the students can think of something that has nothing to do with math, that I cannot somehow relate to math, they can win a prize. And so, you know, same stuff every year. They bring up ketchup and we talk about calories and proportions, or that my students are really into soccer. So we talk about distance and angles and keeping score. I will admit once I was almost stumped. A student raised their hand and said, Mr. Kajitani, I know something that has nothing to do with math. I said, what? They said, love. I said, huh. And I couldn't think of anything. And just as I was about to admit defeat and hand out prizes, another student raised their hand and said, oh, Mr. Kajitani, I know what love has to do with math. I said, what? They said, when you're in love, that could be very expensive. And another student said, oh, I know. I said, what? They said, in math, 1 + 1 = 2. But if you're in love and you're not careful, 1 + 1 could equal 3. Ooh, that's when I had to use two words all teachers must at some point use: moving on. It has been an absolute pleasure, before we take questions and start to wrap things up, to spend some time with you. Look, I never, ever, ever want to be the teacher or the speaker that you hear from and you never hear from them again. I am a normal person who checks their email every day. So if I can help in any way, please, please, please get a hold of Liz or the team at Saddleback Educational Publishing. I do a lot of PD, virtual and in-person. Get a hold of them or get a hold of me through my email, alexkajitani@gmail.com. You can also get a hold of me through my website. Check out some of my books and the other stuff that I'm into. Of course, I will not stop until every kid masters their times table. So check out multiplicationnation.com. You can get it for a student, for your own kid, for a class, for a school. We have whole districts using the program, and you can try it totally free for an entire month. 6 strategies to empower our English learners in math. Number 1, understand how deeply parents care about their education. Number 2, get the name right and learn how to say hello. Number 3, whenever and however possible, make it visual. Number 4, surround them with success so they can envision a life well beyond their wildest dreams. Number 5, remember that sometimes competence comes before confidence. And number 6, whenever and however possible, connect the mathematics with their culture. Don't take the math and force it into their lives. Take their lives and see where it fits into their culture. It has been such an honor, such a pleasure. I'm going to turn it back to the amazing Liz for some final words and some questions. Thank you so much. Back over to you, Liz.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. What a great session. We're going to take questions in a minute, but of course, I always have to tell everybody what's coming up next week. Next week, we have Jody Nulf from Palm Beach County returning, and she's going to do a session on long-term English learners in content area classes, specifically really, as she says, unleashing their superpowers. That means really highlighting their assets and leveraging those for academic success. So she works on a campus just like most of you watching today, and she's got some great ideas to share. So please join us for that session next week, which will be at noon Pacific time. You can register on our website, or you should be receiving an email shortly to register for this event. Don't forget, we do have Saddleback Digital. We have an on-demand webinar should you need more information about getting your high-low books on a digital platform. So check that out. That's on our YouTube channel. And now let's jump into questions. First, let me make sure, okay, we do have some questions. Okay, great. I want to address, before I get to the question that was just submitted, there was one that came in as somebody registered, and I feel like you really answered this question already, but this will give you a chance to kind of reiterate those answers. And this was a teacher, and the majority of his or her students were behind grade level in math, and they were wondering, how is that remediation provided within grade level classrooms so that students can master current content? And I feel like you did answer this question in a way, this idea of competence before confidence. And but a lot of teachers really struggle with integrating those two. It's like, well, they really missed these core skills here. So shouldn't I teach those first before moving on to the grade level content? And like, how do I do that? So any advice around that?
Yeah, that is kind of the, the zillion-dollar question. And first of
Right.
all, let me say you're not alone, right? I work with teachers all over the country, and this question comes up every single day. And let's be honest, this question is really coming up right now after this past year. I don't like the term learning loss. I prefer unfinished learning, right? But it's always been there, and I think we're going to see lots and lots of it, this year, as well as, as students haven't necessarily had the access that they should have gotten to information and to education. And so a lot of times we frame this as either or, right? Either I stop and teach the times tables and put my time into that, and then I can't, but then I can't get to my grade level standards, or I teach the grade level standards and a lot of the students don't really grasp the concepts because they don't know what 8 times 7 is, right? And so what I really sort of, and it's not easy, but what I really recommend is more of an integrated approach where you're doing, a little of this and then a little of this. And then you're going back to, it's more of kind of not a spiral, but more of sort of like, I guess, like a ping pong, where you're sort of going, okay, we're going to start with this word problem, but in order to solve this, as we realize, okay, in order to solve this word problem, we need to be able to multiply. So then we stop and go, okay, who needs some help with multiplication? And then, so we're sort of going from the higher level, more critical thinking skills and the basic skills, and we're sort of constantly ping-ponging back and forth. When we think about what rigor really means, according to the Common Core standards, according to just kind of the definition of rigor does not mean make it harder, right? Rigor does not mean say it louder. Rigor means pursuing the conceptual, the procedural, and the application with equal intensity. So instead of structuring your class where we're going to work an entire day on just the times tables, or the entire day on just this one word problem, instead going, okay, we're going to do a little bit of the times table practice. Maybe we're going to do 5 minutes a day, but we're going to do it every day or 3 days a week. But then we're going to move on to the word problem, and we're going to move on to the order of operations or whatever we're studying that day. And so you're really thinking about it more as like you've got these sort of 3 pots of knowledge from which to draw from, and from which you are educating. And so you're kind of ping-ponging back and forth and building in some time throughout. It is sort of the question, I think, often in math. Now, that being said, if you've got a program, if you've got resources where maybe, as part of the after school program, they can have, like, at one of the elementary schools that I was coaching at, they came to me and they said, hey, we've got this great after school program. We don't really have a lot to do. We don't want to be teachers, but we'd love to help out. So we want to use Multiplication Nation. We'll put the kids on there for 10 minutes every day while they're doing their snack. So finding ways where it's not part of the school day, but finding ways where it's part of, not part of the traditional school day, but finding ways that you can sort of add it in and help the kids maybe get some of that extra practice, but not in a way where, they're going to have to feel like they're just getting more school.
Yeah.
I know that answer only scratches the surface, but again, just really, really thinking about it as not an either or, but a little bit of all 3 or all or both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you said, with the school year coming up, there will be a lot of classrooms and a lot of campuses facing that very question, and coming up with unique solutions that can apply to their specific local situations. But thank you for sharing that. We had another question that came in about other strategies like the Build It strategy. People really like that one. They want more. Is there a place people can go to find more like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do like full day presentations on just conquering word problems and different strategies for word problems and things like that. So if that's something that you're interested in, like I said, feel free to reach out to Liz or the folks at Saddleback, or get in touch with me. And I'd love to, I do those in person, virtual, but a lot with connecting math and literacy, things like that. I'll tell you, there's another strategy that I really love that I can share with you. And that's where you take the numbers out of the word problem, right? So you have the word problem, but you take the numbers out. So now you might have to change some of the wording or the verbiage, things like that, but you take the numbers out. So at first kids look at the problem and they freak out and they go, how are we supposed to solve this? The numbers aren't there. But instead, what you say is, I'll put the numbers back in a moment, but first of all, let's talk about how to solve this. Let's talk about what strategy you would use to solve this once you know the numbers. Would you draw a picture? Would you make an organized list? Can we act it out, right? Because let's be honest here, those state tests are really brilliant at one thing. We teach something all year long, and then they tweak the problem ever so slightly so that if you don't understand the concept and have the strategy, suddenly a year's worth of teaching, the students think that they don't know, how to solve this particular problem. Whereas if they have the strategies that they can use to solve the problems or the word problems, then they can pretty much get through anything. And so having discussions about which strategy would we use, now we put the numbers in, doesn't matter what the numbers are. The kids have a pathway into the problem and through the problem as well. So Build It's a really good high leverage strategy, and taking the problem out of the numbers is a really good one as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not quite as easy as I'm making it sound. You have to really be intentional about how you word the problem, but it's a really effective strategy.
Awesome, thank you. And then, do you have any experience teaching adult learners? We do have quite a few attendees today who teach adult English learners, and Laura says she can definitely see how what you shared today applies to working with adults. But any thoughts on that, or resources that you can point to around working with adult learners in math?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do another session called Strength in Numbers, and it's connecting social emotional learning with mathematics. And so if you think about it, like, there's a lot of adults who, let's just say, have a less than stellar relationship with mathematics, right? Now, I can't tell you that, and you've probably, all of you have heard it as well. Someone comes up to you and says, oh, I'm not really a math person, or, maybe if I had you as my math teacher, I would have been good at math, or, what it comes down to, I think, is that nobody likes to feel stupid, right? Mm-hmm. Feeling stupid is one of the worst feelings in the world. And a lot of times, traditionally in math education, we set students up so that we go, hey, what's 8 times 7, right? What's the answer? And if a student can produce the answer quickly, they are considered smart. If a student cannot produce the answer quickly, they think, oh, I'm not very good at math, right? And so when we're working with adult learners, what happens a lot of time is they come with all this baggage about how they weren't good at math. And so a lot of times what we have to do is we've got to interject self-confidence. We've got to interject self-management skills. You put up the quadratic formula, half the adults in the classroom start to sweat. Half the students in the classroom start to sweat, right? But what if we could give them some coping mechanisms where they knew, okay, they could take a deep breath, they could talk themselves through something. And a lot of times it's just teaching adults to just not freak out, and teaching them to have the confidence to go back and say, okay, maybe you were supposed to learn this in 4th grade. It doesn't matter, right? You're here now, and we're going to confidently move forward together. The other thing with adults is you've got to really connect it to their real lives, right? If you can make the case, when you can make the case that this is important because in your life you're going to, then the adults have a real intrinsic motivation to learn that. And that's a tough one. Just learning something for the sake of learning something as adults, we don't really need that. We don't really need that in our lives. We need to know why we're learning something. And that's what's also going to make it stick. So giving them, helping them with their confidence on a potentially harmful, or negative, bad relationship that they've had with math over their lives, and starting to undo that. And sometimes undoing it just means talking about it is critical, as well as really finding ways to relate it to their life.
Thank you so much. What a great answer, and what great questions. Thank you to all of you for joining us today, spending an hour of your day with us on your summer break. We hopefully will see you next week. You can find Saddleback, whatever your favorite social media platform is, we are there. Go ahead and find us and connect with us. We always love to hear from you. And thank you for all that you do. And thank you, Alex Kajitani, for your time and sharing your expertise with us. We really appreciate that you took the time out of your summer to come and hang out with us at Saddleback and share your knowledge with our audience. So thank you so much.
An honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much. And again, please, everybody, reach out anytime to the folks at Saddleback or to me.
Everybody, hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks, Alex.
Hey, thanks so much, everybody.
Bye-bye.